right, welcome back to the 2086 NBA playoffs. This is the second round, folks. We are in the Western Conference Semifinals, and the Phoenix Suns are facing off against the Minnesota Timberwolves, and they have taken a 1-1 series. I guess they tied the series 1-1 in this game. They went down 1-0 last game to Minnesota. Minnesota won, and this is game 2. Peter Wise at the free throw line right now. It's only 11 seconds to go in the fourth quarter, and Phoenix Suns is about to close it out and take a tied series game. You know what I'm saying? I don't even know how to say it, but they're tying up the series, man. And this is big. They are technically the lower seed, even though I think that most people would agree that this is probably a better team, low-key, than the Timberwolves. They are a recent champion. They won the championship in 2084 as a 6th seed, by the way. Just by the way. But yeah, man, like they did their little thing. This is a pretty low-scoring game, low-key. The top scorer on this team was Taylor Jennings, and then on the other side, the top scorer over there was Randolph Jennings. They're not related, by the way, but they have the same name. But yeah, for the Suns, we got Taylor Jennings. He had 24 and 10, 8 for 15 from the field. Great game. Tyson Miles, he struggled a little bit, 8 for 26, but he still ended up with 22 points. And he 5 blocks from him as a shooting guard, 6'6". So that's always nice. Stephen Gibson, age 36. Going crazy, 18 and 10, 2 blocks. That's what I like to see from our big man. We got Christopher Sullivan off the bench with 17 and 6. Let's go. That's what we like to see. Roger Sampson with 13 and 15, 4 blocks. Like, this is what he does. This is him, man. This is him at his prime. This is him, like, in his element. He's the defensive anchor of this team. He was drafted 5th overall back in 2073, man, and he's been the defensive anchor of this team this entire time. He's been in Phoenix all 13 years of his career. And, they went through some ups and downs early on in his career. Sampson, I believe he was the first player drafted in their new rebuild. Yes, he was. I'm pretty sure. And then Taylor Jennings, he was drafted in 2074. He was only the 14th overall pick. He's only 6'1". But the Phoenix Suns, man, like, I'm telling you, bro, they saw this Taylor Jennings guy, and they knew that he was going to be a star. Like, they just knew it. Like, it just, some guys you can just tell that they just understand the game. He just knows how shit works. He just gets it. And even though he slipped, he came from North Carolina. He was an undersized guard, seemingly, but he has long arms. He has some muscle on him, and he knows how to do everything. He can shoot, he can pass, he can score, he can rebound a little bit. He can get a lot of steals. Like, he was just a perfect prototype point guard. And the Phoenix Suns just saw all that through all the BS that all the draft scouts were talking about, which made him slip. But they saw through all that, man. They drafted 14th overall, and he has become an absolute franchise pillar. He's averaging 29 and 12 on the season, 1.9 steals. And then for his career, look at this. Across 12 years, he's averaging 27 and 12 and 2 for his career. Over 12 years. 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. 6-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA, 1-time champion, 1-time Finals MVP, and 1-time Rookie of the Year. Holy shit, like, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations, man. Like, we're going to have some uncomfortable conversations about Taylor Jennings, man. Like, in a historical aspect, this dude he's climbing up the ranks, man. He's not only just a great player in this generation, he's making some historical noise here. But Tyson Miles, he was a younger guy in the rebuild. He was drafted in 2078, 8th overall. He slipped to 8th overall. Everybody knew that he could score, but they didn't think that he would be scoring like this. He came out the gate in 2078, his rookie year, averaging 26, 5 and 5. Next year, 25. Next year, 30. Next year, 30. Next year, 29. Next year, 30. Next year, 30. Next year, 30. Like, look at this shit, bro. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 seasons of 30 points per game, bro. And it's crazy that they're all like 30. Like, he doesn't have any 31s. They're all 30.6, 30.3, 30.2, whatever. But he's a consistent 30-point per game scorer. Like, you can't take anything away from that. He made his first All-NBA team this year, finally solidifying himself as one of the top dogs in this league. After winning a championship in 2084, he was like, without him, they wouldn't have won that championship, right? He was putting up 30 a game for them. In 2084, that was only his, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That was only his 6th year in the league. He was only like 24 years old, and he won a championship because, he was that much of a scorer. But the draft scouts, they didn't even think that he could be that type of scorer. They just thought, okay, he might be able to score a little bit. But this dude is huge, man. You got to look at his body frame. Like, this dude is super muscular, super just thick. Like, he just be bullying guys, and he's 6'6", and he just be bullying dudes, man. He be getting rebounds, he be dunking on people. But he's kind of got some finesse about him too, though. Like, that's the thing. He's a very interesting player, honestly. Very, very strong and capable, but still got some finesse and some flair and flash. So, and he's a 5-time All-Star, and he's only 26 years old. So, 1-time All-NBA member, 2nd team All-NBA this year, well deserved, and he's a 1-time champion already. So, yeah. And then we got Stephen Gibson, my boy. This guy has had a very interesting career. He's drafted 5th overall to Golden State long ago, 2068. So, yeah, he's an OG for sure. He up there in age. He's 36 years old, man. But he came out the gate averaging 14 and 8. And then, as you can see, he never averaged more than 22 points a game in Golden State over, what is this, 4, 5, 6, over 8 years in Golden State. He never averaged over 22 points a game because he was never seen as the focal point of their offense necessarily. They had a very good team around this time. They had a lot of guards that could score. They had, other guys that could score. And so he wasn't looked to score. He was like, yo, you anchor this defense. You're 7'3". You can anchor our defense. And so he was doing that, early in his career. And then when all those guys left, and he was left alone in Golden State by himself in 2076, he started averaging 30. And he was already averaging 12 rebounds a game, so he was averaging 30 and 13, 2 blocks a game. Everybody was like, holy shit, what the fuck? Where did this come from? This dude is legit. This dude is him. And so, but the team was absolutely terrible. This team was god-awful by the time that he was putting up all the numbers. And so, unfortunately, they had to trade him to Orlando because, he was entering his prime and he was putting up all these numbers and they were nowhere near contending. Like, there was no clear path to contention. So they ended up shipping him out to Orlando and they got a bunch of young assets back. They helped them build the current state that they're in now. But Orlando gets Stephen Gibson, who was hoping for them. Look at these numbers, man. 30 points, 12 rebounds, 2 blocks. Like, that was his thing. He did that for 6 years in Orlando, man. Brought them to the finals twice, as we know, in 2076 and 2078. Unfortunately, they lost to Seattle Supersonics both years. But yeah, Stephen Gibson was there in Orlando with Richard Valentine, who we covered in the last episode, who only appeared there because of Derek Callaway and that trade and all that. And then Stephen Gibson was there. That team, they had AJ Webster at the 2, they had Richard Valentine at the 3, Stephen Gibson at either the 4 or the 5, and then they had who was their 5, man? I forgot. I'm gonna be honest. I forgot who they had, but they had somebody, bro. And that was a damn good team, bro. They were so dynamic and they were so fun to watch. They were just really good for some reason. And that wasn't even supposed to be like a crazy team, but they ended up being like the top dogs out there in the East, man. Really caused some havoc. Really had a lot of playoff battles. Really was just like very relevant during that time in the 70s. And then that chapter came to a close, and Orlando made a pretty bold decision to end up trading Stephen Gibson in 2083 after about 2 or 3 first-round exits in Orlando. After they made the finals a couple times, they started, making the first-round exit. And so they were like, you know what, fuck this. Trade all these niggas. Trade everybody else. They decided to pull the plug and just ship everybody out because they didn't want to just ride him out and just wait till he was the age he is now to try to, trade him. So they were just like, yo, they're in their early 30s. We can still get some assets for them. They're still playing very well, and so they shipped them out. And Phoenix was right for the calling, whatever. They needed a really good center. They needed a really good big man to pair along with Roderick Sampson because Roderick Sampson, as we know, was the franchise pillar, the franchise defensive anchor rather. And so we added Christopher Sullivan, who was the first pick in 2076, by the way. Yes, he was the first pick overall to Boston Celtics of all teams. That was a very prestigious pick or whatever, but he was good. Look at these numbers. They were decent, but he just couldn't really break out. He just didn't become the superstar that they thought that he would be at the first overall pick, right? This is a jack of all trades type of center. They thought he would end up being like what Darren Griffith ended up being for Louisville and all that type of stuff. He averaged 19 and 8, 1.5 blocks his rookie year, so that was really, really promising. And then the second year, he averaged 22 and 9, 1.7 blocks. So they're like, yo, this dude he's coming up. But the next year, in 2079, his third year, he dipped back down to 19 and 7 and then 1.4 blocks. And then they're like, okay, that's weird. And mind you, they're giving him the keys to the offense. It's not for a lack of trying. He wasn't super duper efficient. Only 56 through 58% from true shooting percentage. And so he wasn't super duper efficient. And so they're like, damn, bro, what's wrong with this guy? Yeah, look at this. He came off the bench a couple times. He lost a starting spot a little bit. Damn, bro. They were very, very disappointed with this. And so in year 4, 2080, they were just done. They said, fuck this. I'm trading you, right? They traded him away to Phoenix, where he's been ever since. And at first, Phoenix, took the bait. They tried to start him alongside Sampson, for a nice little Twin Towers lineup. That would have been really nice. And, they did do decent, actually. They made, I believe, the 1 seed or the 2 seed or something in one of those years. Let me look, actually. Let me fact check that because that was a big turning point. Because before that, they didn't really have a center. They had Nate McCoy back in the day, who I've covered in earlier videos, but he was the center alongside Sampson. So they had a couple different tries, trying to pair a center, trying to pair a big man with Roderick Sampson. They tried to make this front court for years, and they just couldn't find the right partner. But they knew that Sampson was the guy. They knew that he was the right guy to keep, but they just couldn't find the right partner for him. Yes, in 2081, they made the 1 seed with Roger Sampson at the 4, with Sullivan at the 4, Sampson at the 5. So yeah, we had Sullivan here, and then we had Sampson here at the 5. And so that was a good team. They had who they have now. They had Taylor Jennings at the 1, Tyson Miles at the 2, and then they had our boy Johnny Booker, who's been here since 2075. He was a 3rd pick overall back then, and he's been a reliable starter ever since. He's had seasons over 20, 25 points a game. But he's like a Guy Jamison for the Bucks. Like he kind of just gives you what you want, gives you what you need, and not too much else. He's been an All-Star once though. He made one All-Star team back in 2080. But in 2081, man, they were the number 1 seed out west, and they made the conference finals against the Timberwolves, where they lost in 6 games. But that team was really good. And so what happened next was in 2082 they ran it back, but this time they fell to the 4th seed because it was just a little bit redundant, and like Sullivan didn't pop off the way that they needed. They needed a real scoring punch. They had him; he was fine, but look at these. Like he kind of fell off a little bit in the rebounding department. He only averaged like 6 rebounds a game as a starter, and it was kind of weird. Like he just didn't do what these teams expected him to do necessarily. And so he lost the starting spot again because they made the decision to trade for Stephen Gibson from Orlando because they were, having their little sale or whatever. And so they picked him up, and he was the perfect real front court member alongside Sampson. And it allowed Sullivan to move to the bench. So now Sullivan is like a hyperactive, big man, like a generational type of big man off the bench. He has all the skill sets of a generational type of big man. He can shoot, he can post up, he can rebound, he can block, but he just doesn't do all that consistent enough to be the starter. So him off the bench is really, really good. And that was a really big focal point of why they won in 2084, because not a lot of post guys off the bench can guard him. Like he can post up all those guys, and he can dunk and catch lobs, and he can do everything that a great center could do, but just not super, effective and efficient all the time. So that's why he was really good in a reduced role. And so we had him, and we had Stephen Gibson starting over him. And look at these numbers. He had 27 and 9, two blocks a game off as a starting lineup. And he had 23 and 8, 22 and 8. Like, he did scoring a little bit, but that first year in 2084, 27 and 9, 2 blocks. And they were only the 6th seed that year, but it was just a very competitive Western Conference. But they won the championship that year, 2084. Stephen Gibson's first championship after 2 finals appearances and hella conference finals appearances. And like I said in one of my videos, bro, I was like, Stephen Gibson, we will have to have some uncomfortable conversations about him too, because he's been winning everywhere he goes. In Golden State, he was winning as a defensive anchor, and then in Orlando, he was winning as the focal point. He went to the finals a couple times, and then here in Phoenix, he won an actual championship, and now he's in the 2nd round again. It's like, oh my gosh, like this dude has so much playoff success in his career with only 1 championship, but he's been winning everywhere he goes. So I'm like, yo, like y'all gotta, I might have to realize what's going on here. He's averaging 68% true shooting in the playoffs right now at 36 years old. Like he's going crazy. This dude is a winner, bona fide. Like, he's a bona fide winner. He made the conference finals a couple times with Golden State while they didn't even have anything crazy. And it just goes to show like how impactful he is. And he's on the decline a little bit, but he's still playing great. And we got Johnny Booker, like I said. He was a 3rd overall pick in 2075. We got Chase Ellis, who was the 26th pick in 2082. And he plays alongside Sullivan in the backup front court. And he's an athletic, rim-running big type of guy. He can block shots, catch lobs, like a very useful, athletic big. Useful athletic young big that they keep off the bench to give some variety to that second unit. Sullivan, he can catch lobs, but he's not really a high flyer. He's more of a post-up type of guy, face-up type of guy. And so we have like a high flyer and Chase Ellis, which is pretty nice to offset that. And then we got Walter Austin, who has had his ups and downs in his own career. He started off in Philadelphia, 8th pick overall in 2071. So he was a top 10 pick, and he was super duper athletic. He averaged 10 points a game his rookie year. And then in the next couple years, he averaged 6 points and then 7 points. Still super efficient. He was still a part of that team. He just didn't score a whole bunch, but he was still a part of that team. But they just had a lot of guys. That Philly team was fresh off a rebuild. They had a lot of guys, and so he was just kind of buried in that depth chart. He ends up getting shipped off to Boston for Stanley Tatum. And then Philly ends up actually winning a championship with Stanley Tatum at the helm, and Garrett Franklin and all that in 2077. But Walter Austin is in Boston. That's a rhyme. But Austin goes to Boston in 2075 in exchange for Tatum, and he averages 26 a game, and then he averaged 26 a game again, and then he dips off to 20 a game in 2077. So we had a 3-year stint in Boston, pretty good, but Boston was god awful in this time period. They were really, really bad, and so he didn't really get a whole bunch of recognition for it. He ends up getting shipped to Washington for Carlton McCall. And that was an interesting trade in itself because Carlton McCaw was an all-star for Washington. And he was really good. He was really young, too. He was only like 24, 25. But they had gone through some first-round exits and stuff. And I guess, they thought that Carlton McCaw was going to be like a generational type of guy. But he didn't end up being it. But at the time, like he wanted to win, and they weren't winning. And so they shipped him to Boston to have his own team because Washington had more of a veteran team. And Carlton McCaw, like I said, he was only at 24, 25. And at this point, Austin was deep into his career. He was about 6-7 years into his career. So he was a vet. And so he came in averaging 27 a game, 27, 6, and 6 for Washington. And 27, 7, and 7 in the next year in 2079. So this dude was hoping for Washington. And this is where he got his recognition because they won like 60 games a couple times. Like they were really, really good. They never won a championship, but he was at the helm in Washington for years and years. Even after they traded their stars, he was still there, still putting up numbers. He was kind of like the gap bridger into their era that they're in now. They held on to him for a little bit after they traded some of their guys, and they ended up being kind of bad. But they shipped him off to Phoenix eventually in 2083 for a guy named it was a center, Cam Higgins. Cam Higgins was a center from Phoenix who they traded. He was like the 12th pick. I should probably exit this game so I can show you actually the rosters. Let's let the time run out here. But Cam Higgins was on the Suns. He was like the 12th pick in one of those years, probably 70 something, late 70s, whatever. Maybe it's they drafted him. He was a decent backup center. And then Washington needed a center really badly. And Cam Higgins just showed potential off the bench. So they said, okay, here, take this veteran Austin. We need a center. And that was a pretty good trade for both sides. They needed to get rid of Austin because he was actually helping them win a little bit too much. A little bit. No, he wasn't carrying them or nothing, but they were like, we can get some assets for him because he's still good. And he's in his prime. He's a vet now. So they ship him off to Phoenix where he fits in really well. And he's a really, really good dunker. Like I said, he's super athletic. And so he'd be dunking on people. And he's a very excellent shooter. He's actually leading the league in three-point percentage, believe it or not. He's averaging 51% from three. Absolutely insane. During the playoffs, he's averaging 60% from three. But he's only averaging 59% true shooting in the playoffs so far. So I don't know what's up with that. 42% from the field, 60% from three so far in the playoffs. So that's kind of weird. And then we got Larry Meyer, who was the 31st overall pick in 2081. So this was but he's really shown that he has some value, man. He might be a future all-star type of guy. Like he's really, really good. He can shoot, he can pass, he can score, he can dunk, like he can do everything that you need. He's 6'7". So like just a complete steal there at 31st overall. And then Scott Sampson, not related to Roger Sampson, but same name, but he was the 31st pick of the second round. And mind you, there's 32 teams in the league. So he was the 31st pick of the second round. So damn near the last pick, damn near undrafted from Portland. They draft him, and he didn't really play his first year. But that second year, he started getting a little bit of playing time, and he was super duper efficient. Look at these numbers: 49% from the field, 48% from three. Holy shit! And then 78% from the line. Like he's doing really good as a backup point guard. Like imagine you draft a guy that late in the second round. You're not thinking he's gonna be shit. You're like, look, we're just gonna take a flyer on a guy. We'll just see what happens. They just threw him into the lineup because they had some injuries or whatever, and he ended up being super efficient and being like effective. Look at this, 65% true shooting that his rookie year. They were like, holy fuck, this dude is impactful. And so he ends up being their main backup point guard. Like just genuinely, he's their sixth man, their backup point guard. As a what that's got to be what 60 something pick, 63rd pick I think technically in the draft. That's insane. And so he's really had just a crazy come up. He was clearly very underrated by the draft process, and the scouts and all that. Either that or Phoenix just has such a well-oiled machine that he fits very nicely, and he just can check all the boxes. He can dunk, he can pass, he can do everything you need from a point guard. And so, he was perfect for that backup point guard role. And so him and Ellis make a nice little combo off the bench. He was throwing lobs to Ellis all the time. They came up together. There were some young guys, and that was cool. And then we got Meyer coming off the bench. He averaged 10 points a game this year for the first time, double digits. He started 20 games. He's only 25 years old, so he's probably going to take Johnny Booker's spot in the starting lineup, honestly. Probably next year, he's probably going to overtake Booker. Because he's averaging 10 points a game in the playoffs as a starter, so that's a little bit underwhelming. But yeah, let me show you Cam Higgins. Not super important, but, might as well, right? Just in the spirit of lore. We got Cam Higgins, here he is in Washington, as I said. Look at this. Yes, he was drafted in 2072, 16th overall, 7 foot. And, he had some years. He didn't play this year. He got injured in 2076. But he had some years. Look at this. 15 points a game in 2079. And so this is one of the years that they were trying to have Cam Higgins in the front court next to Sampson. And so, as you can see, like I said, they tried many different front court partners for Sampson. And it just didn't work until they got Stephen Gibson. So they tried Cam Higgins for a year. He averaged 15 and 9 as a starter, so pretty good. Like that's respectable. 16 points, 10 rebounds, but he wasn't what they needed. And so Washington saw that though. They were like, oh, okay, he's had starting experience. He was still decently young at the time, so they traded Walter Austin for him and this guy right here, Dmitry Chugainov. I don't even know how to say his name. He's from Slovenia, and he was the 23rd overall pick in 2078. And he was looked at as like a big steal for Phoenix because he can do everything. He can shoot, he can pass, he can defend. He was like a 3-and-D guy, but he had some playmaking chops. And he was 6'6", like he had some good size. And they were like, yo, this could be a really nice pick for us. And so he was coming off the bench for a couple years in Phoenix, and he was doing his thing. Not super duper efficient, not breaking out exactly the way that they wanted, and so they ended up packaging him and Cam Higgins to get Walter Austin, and that was a pretty good trade. And now they're both doing pretty well in Washington. Well, maybe not Chugainov, right? The second, they lost in 5 games, and he did not play well at all against Louisville. But who does play well against Louisville, right? So I think was this his first playoff experience? It might have been, low-key. No, I don't think it was. But also, an interesting point of this. The guys that they traded for Stephen Gibson right here in Orlando, Stephon Haywood and Timmy Price. Timmy Price, now this guy has an interesting story because he was the 11th overall pick, 2078, right? He came off the bench first couple years, and he was pretty efficient, whatever, and they're still trying to find, mind you, at this time, they're still trying to find the front partner for Sampson, and so he's a power forward technically, but he's only 6'10", and so he's a little bit of a tweener. He's a little bit of a 3-4 tweener, but they started him at the power forward because that's more of his natural spot. And he was very, very efficient. Look at this. 69% true shooting in his second year. And so they said, fuck it, you're starting. They started him next to Sampson. And I believe one of these years, 2081, that was the year that they were in the first seed. They went to the conference finals. And guess what? Timmy Price was actually the starting power forward in that conference finals run. Because this guy, Phoenix, Christopher Sullivan, who was the starting power forward next to Sampson, was not playing very well. And so they benched him for Timmy Price, who was only in his second year at the time. And they made the conference finals with him at the starting power forward position. Like I said, they lost, but that was a big eye-opener. They're like, oh my gosh, this guy is impactful. He's not just a body that we can play. He's genuinely impactful. They played him and they were winning games all the way to the conference finals. So that was really, 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 really big. And so they're like, okay. But they still didn't really love the lineup though, because he's only 6'10", like I said, and then Sampson, he's like 7'1", and you had other teams out here running double 7'2" bigs type shit. You know what I'm saying? Like they had a little bit of a size disadvantage with Timmy Price as the main power forward, just a little bit. And he wasn't even that big and muscular at the time. He's pretty muscular now, but at the time, second year, he wasn't that big and strong. But again, he was impactful because they were winning, because he could shoot. That was a big thing. He could shoot threes, and he was shooting better than Sullivan at the time. And he was rebounding and doing everything. So anyway, 2082, he starts a couple of games, but they kind of switch off between him and Sullivan still. They're still trying to figure out, how to move forward. And then 2083 is when they said they pulled the plug and they pulled the trigger on the Stephen Gibson trade to Orlando. And so they ship him, Timmy Price, along with Stephon Haywood, who was the 9th pick in 2077 to Phoenix. So he averaged about 9 points a game his first 3 years, and then 5 points a game the next couple years. And so he was literally like, he's coming out of Indiana State. This dude is a bona fide scorer. Everybody knew it. They didn't think that he could defend very well or do much of anything else. But he's 6'7", and he can put that ball in the basket. Like, if nothing else, he can shoot that pill. He can shoot the three. He can shoot the midi. He can score on the inside. He had a lot of badges. He was very, he was kind of famous in a way. Like, people knew him because he could score. He was filling it up in college. And he gets to Phoenix, and he's coming off the bench. And look at these numbers: 50% from the field, 40% from three, 50, 40, 90, like off the bench as a young player. So, they knew that he had potential, but they just couldn't start him over guys like Tyson Miles and stuff like that. So, unfortunately, he was just kind of buried a little bit. But he wasn't buried. He was still, 9 points a game is solid, for a rookie, especially for a young player. But then, as you can see, he went from 8 points a game to 5 points a game because that's when they added Chugainov and a bunch of other wings. And so they really didn't have a lot of space for him because he wasn't breaking out. They wanted him to be the starter next to Tyson Miles, but that just didn't happen really. And so they ended up trading Haywood and Price. They ship them together, they package them together, and, I think a couple picks or whatever, and they ship him to Orlando for Stephen Gibson. And then ironically, that year that Orlando shipped off Valentine and Gibson. They shipped Valentine to Houston, and they shipped Gibson to Phoenix. But that year, 2083, Orlando actually knocked off the number 1 seed Indiana Pacers in the playoffs, because they still made the 8th seed because they had Gibson and Valentine for the first half of the season or whatever. So they were still good. Which also ties into why that was such a big trade, because they were still technically good. And most GMs are afraid to break up a team that's still technically good. There's not really anything wrong with them necessarily, and so that's why it was such a bold move. But they trade him away, and they still end up making the 8th seed that year, because Stephon Haywood and Timmy Price both broke out for Orlando that year, and so they made the 8th seed, and then they knocked off the 1 seed Indiana Pacers, which was a big surprise to everybody, and then they lost in the second round. But anyway, all that to say that Phoenix had a lot of talent, and so they made very strategic trades to get the team that they have now. And Haywood and Price are both balling out for Orlando right now, by the way. So there's a little bit of, but no matter how good they play for Orlando, Phoenix side of the trade is confirmed as great because they won a championship in 2084. So they literally won a championship. So there's nothing you can say about their side of the trade, even if these guys are breaking out in Orlando, because they weren't gonna break out here in Phoenix anyway. And so, anyway, all that to say, I know I'll be going on tangents, y'all, but y'all need to know this. And so they had all those guys, right? And on top of that, I think I mentioned this in one of the videos before, but Christopher Sullivan, they got him from Boston by shipping out Gerard Robertson, who is currently in New Orleans. Let's check him out. Yes, 12th overall pick in 2076. He came off the bench for Phoenix the first couple years, and then he was traded in 2080 for Christopher Sullivan to Boston, and then he kind of bounced around since then. Went to Miami, and now he's in New Orleans. But he was a part of that trade. Who else? It was Gerard Robinson, and it was Rice. Oh yeah. Bro, y'all gotta see this shit. Y'all gotta see this. Here he is, Harvey Rice. He was the 7th overall pick in 2076. So, as you can see, they tried to pair him with Tyson Miles. I mean, not Tyson Miles. They tried to pair him with Taylor Jennings. They thought that Harvey Rice, who's a shooting guard, 6'4", they thought that him and Jennings was going to be their backcourt of the future, but that didn't work out, clearly. Harvey Rice, he averaged 21 a game his first year, but he kind of dipped off after that, and he didn't really get up to the mid-20s and high 20s like they thought he could. And so they shipped him off to Boston, along with Gerard Robinson and this guy, Dante Simpson. And I know if you look at his career, I know if you look at his box scores or whatever, like, it doesn't say Phoenix on it, right? You're like, what are you talking about? He's in Boston right now. He's been in Boston his whole career. All it says is Boston. I don't see any Phoenix. What do you mean? He was traded for Christopher Sullivan. Well, if you go to the scouting and we go to player comparison, let's go ahead and go to the Boston Celtics, because this is a very interesting piece of the story. Dante Simpson, here he is. Look at that. Drafted 2079, round 1, pick 19, Suns. So they traded Dante Simpson, Gerard Robertson, and Harvey Rice, and a couple picks for Sullivan. So that shows you he still had some value. You know, I was talking shit about him, but he still had value. And like I said, he's still good. He still has a very valuable skill set as a big man. But Dante Simpson has become an absolute superstar for Boston. He's averaging 31 and 9, 31.5 and 9, I should say, and 2.6 blocks on 61% field goal percentage, 35% from 3, 99% from the free throw line. Absolute stud, absolute great player. And he's a 2-time All-Star, 2-time All-NBA. You know, this dude is great. He's averaging 72% true shooting with those goddamn numbers, man. Are you kidding me? Super efficient. He's never been below 55% from the field in his whole career, by the way. So, you know, like I said, like Phoenix, they traded away some really, really good players. Dante Simpson, Timmy Price, Stephon Haywood, who are putting up huge numbers in other places in the East. And so, you know, there's some conversations to be had about, you know, whether those were the right trades or not. But, like I said, you can't say anything because they won a championship. And so that validates all these trades, no matter how good the players are playing otherwise in other places. And so, yeah, that's a lot. I know it's very detailed. I know it was a lot, but this is the Suns. There's a lot that went into this team, so that's why I had to explain a lot of it. There's a lot that went into this current team and how they end up how they are right now. And so, you know, knowing the backstory really helps you understand the weight of this team and what they're going through right now. And so they are the 3 seed currently. They lost in the conference finals last year to OKC after winning the championship in 2084. And so, you know, people thought it was kind of a fluke in 2084. They're like, okay, they were the 6th seed. They beat off another 6th seed in the finals, which was the first 6 seed finals in NBA history, and probably the last, right? but you know, that was a pretty interesting year. But they came out on top, and you can't take that away from them. But they are really showing that they had more longevity and more legitimacy than people thought, because they made the conference finals the very next year, and they're already in the second round again. And so they're probably going to make the conference finals again, or they're trying to. Maybe even the finals. Who knows, right? So they're trying to kind of validate their championship, which is weird, right? Like, you don't need to. It feels like you don't need to validate a championship, but they kind of feel like they do because they only won as a 6th seed. So, I don't know. Like, obviously, they don't really care about validation and stuff, but, there's a little bit about that. And Tyson Miles, like I said, made his first All-NBA second team this year. And Taylor Jennings made his first All-NBA first team this year, 2086. This was his first team All-NBA, despite being a 4-time All-NBA player before that and already a Finals MVP. So this year was kind of a validation for both Miles and Jennings, as they both made their first All-NBA, like the first super high All-NBA teams in their careers. So congratulations to them. But yeah. So they're tied the series 1-1 against Minnesota. And so that's going to be a very back and forth series. I think that's going to be a very good series. They have very different teams. But I'm not going to lie. This is a very, very hard matchup for the Timberwolves. Because Randolph Jennings, he has a little bit of the same problem as Timmy Price. He's only 6'10". He's a lot better than Timmy Price, I think. Like, kind of objectively. But I don't know, man. He's only 6'10", facing off against the 7'3" Stephen Gibson. So that's a very bad matchup, low-key. And then their center, Roland O'Neal, is just not him. Like, he's good. He's 7'2". He can block shots. Holy shit, he's averaging 5 blocks a game this playoff run, by the way. 12 rebounds. So maybe he is him. Maybe I should shut up. maybe I should stop talking shit. But they have him, and then he's guarding Roderick Sampson, and as you can see, Roderick, he had 15 and 4 like the last game, so that's not really working so far. Johnny Booker is a very good defender, and so he can kind of try to guard Otis Chambers a little bit. And then Tim Sutton is old. He's 38 years old, and look at this. He's only averaging 37% from the field, unfortunately. And I really, really hate to see this. I wanted Tim Sutton to get a ring. Like, look at these fucking numbers, bro. He's averaged 30 points a game for the last 15 years, basically. 25 plus for the last 15 years, bro. I really hate to see him like this. I really wish he could have won a championship at some point. He's a 2-time MVP, 14-time All-Star, 5-time All-NBA. Sorry, 8-time All-NBA, 5-time first-team All-NBA. So this dude is really, really like, one of the guys of this generation, no doubt. But he's old right now, and he can kind of get clamped up by Tyson Miles. And Tyson Miles is a lot bigger, a lot stronger, and he's a lot younger and more athletic. And so this is just a bad matchup for Tim Sutton. And then Peter McGuire, he's matched up against Taylor Jennings at the 1. He's a lot taller than him, but it's just still not a great matchup. Like, this is not a good matchup for Minnesota. They have a very good team. Like, everybody here is legit. Terrence Rose off the bench is legit. Wally Red is legit. Like, they have some guys on that team, but it's just not a good matchup for them versus Phoenix. They won the first game, though, so anything can happen, obviously, but I just don't think this is a great matchup for Minnesota, personally. So we'll see how they end up. But next up on the cards for this postseason, we got Chicago Bulls versus the Toronto Raptors, and I'll cover that in the next video. 2 low seeds, 6 seed versus 7 seed in the semifinals. So, and look at this. This is an interesting playoff second round because we have almost every single seed number except 5 seed. We have the 1 seed, 2 4 seeds, 1 8 seed in Dallas Mavericks, a 2 seed, a 3 seed, a 6 seed, and a 7 seed. So literally almost every single seed. This is only. I remember this happened in real life in what year was that? I think it was 2023, right? Because the Heat had beat the Bucks, and so they were the 8 seed. And there was like a bunch of it's pretty rare to have that, to have each number seed in the second round, and it didn't happen this year, obviously, because there's 2 4 seeds, but it almost happened. So this is a pretty interesting playoff run so far, man. Like a lot of unanswered questions, a lot of things are going to come to light. A lot of things are getting exposed. A lot of people are getting exposed. A lot of teams are, fighting their way, and they're trying to win. And it's all for that Larry O'Brien trophy at the end of the day. That's what it's all for. That's what it's all about, baby. And I will check you guys out in the next video with Chicago versus Toronto, and go into the depths of their matchup a little bit. So I hope you guys enjoyed. I know this is a pretty long one, but thank you for sticking around. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Peace.